Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Shemos, begin Chumash Shemos. And generally when we begin a Chumash, there's a tremendous feeling of excitement, of optimism, of elation. But we know that when we begin Chumash Shemos, we're about to enter into the very difficult narrative of Egyptian servitude, 210 years of darkness, of difficulty, of barbaric mistreatment. And the Torah begins this narrative with a seemingly redundant pasuk. The Torah writes, Ve'el Shemos b'nei Yisrael b'ay Mitzrayim. These are the names of the children of Yaakov who came down to Egypt, Ish ubeso bo, each person along with his family. And the Torah then goes on to count, literally again, the names of the different Shvatim, telling us that there were 70 people who came down to Egypt. Yosef was in Mitzrayim. Beautiful. So Rashi HaKodesh is bothered by an obvious question, which is the Torah already did this. We did this back in the end of Bereshis. When Yaakov Avinu's family left Canaan and came down to Mitzrayim to settle in Goshen, we already went through the names of the people who came down. We did this already. So why are you repeating it again? And Rashi HaKodesh says something beautiful. Rashi quotes, and he says, even though again we counted the children of Yaakov and his family when they were alive at the end of Bereshis, Chazar u'mena'am b'misasam. The Torah goes ahead and counts them again. Remember, they all died. Because, remember, this was the end of Parshas Vayechi. Yosef died, his brothers died, everybody died out. So in Bereshis, at the end of Bereshis, when we counted Yaakov's family, they were alive. And Rashi says now we're counting them again after they passed away. Why do that? Lahodia chibasam. To show the love, Shenimshu Kochavim, because Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, the children of Yaakov, are compared to the stars. Shemotziam umachnisam b'mispar ushmosam. So again, the Rashi then goes on to quote the pasuk in Yeshaya that says that when Hashem takes out, so to speak, and puts away the stars each and every day, He counts them by name. Shene Emar Hamotzi b'mispar tzva'am luchulam b'shem yikra. So literally, again, Hashem takes out the stars b'mispar tzva'am in numbers of their multitude, the kulam b'shem yikra, and He calls each star by a name. It's a beautiful idea. So Rashi understands, over quoting the Medrash Tanchuma, that the restating of the names of the children of Yaakov is a display of love. Display of love. And just like Hashem loves the stars, so every time He takes them out, He counts them, each one individually, and when He puts them away, He counts them, and apparently the stars have names also. Kadosh Baruch Hu counts them, identifies them by name. When He takes them out, puts them away. So too, Klal Yisrael is compared to the stars, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and articulates our names, both when we're alive, as well as when we pass away. A beautiful and incredible idea. And I saw something dramatically amazing by the Sfas Emes, the Ger Rebbe. And the Sfas Emes says as follows. He says, what exactly does it mean? He says, Lemi modia hakosov chibasam. When Rashi says, to show the love, hodia chibasan, who is the love being shown to? And the Sfas Emes says something so beautiful yet so profound. He says, Libnei Yisrael atzmon. Hashem is trying to convey to us how much He loves us. Shekol Yehudi bifnei atzma mechuyev ladas. Every Jew needs to know ki Hashem yisparach ohavo. If there's one thing you have to know as a Yid, it is that the Ribono Shel Olam loves you. That's what you have to know. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you. V'chihu bichlal hakruyim Hashem tzivakos Hashem. And just like the stars are called Tzivaos Hashem, right? The stars are called the hosts, so to speak, of the celestial sphere. Ukeshem shebara Hashem es hakochavim, kedei sheya'iru b'chesh chasal. What's the role of the stars? The role of the stars is to go ahead and create light in the darkness. Kach bara es Yisrael leman yafitzu es ar Elokim v'yachtiru lemekomos hachashuchim v'hamushpalim b'yoser. A Jew has the same job as a star. A star's job is to be placed in the absolute blackness, the darkness of the heavens, and to bring a little bit of light. And what's the job of a Yid? The job of a Jew is to come into a world that is sometimes so dark, so overwhelming, and to infuse a little bit of light or a lot of light into a space which would otherwise be dark. So Sfas Emes says something so beautiful. There are two concepts that the Torah is conveying to us in what appears to be a redundant pasuk. Number one, Hashem loves us. Hashem loves me. Hashem loves you. Hashem loves us. And that love, the Mishnah of us speaks out the idea that there are different types of love. There's ava hatuluya b'davar and ava she'ina tuluya b'davar. There is love that is dependent on something, conditional love. And then there's unconditional love. Kadosh Baruch Hu loves us in an unconditional way. And the Sfas Emes says, Sefer Shemos is the beginning of the story of our nation. Chumash Bereshis is the story of individuals, avos, imos, matriarchs, patriarchs, families. Sefer Shemos is the beginning of the narrative of the Jewish people, the nation. And so says the Sfas Emes, what is the first lesson in Chumash Shemos that the Ribono Shel Olam conveys to us? The first lesson is Hashem loves you. That's it. Before we get into any Aseres HaDibros and Torah and mitzvahs and Shabbos and Bris Milah and everything else, Hashem loves you. That's the first message Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us as a nation. Hashem loves you. What does Rashi say? Even though Hashem counted us in Chumash Bereshis, He does it again here. Lohodia chibasan. To show us that He loves us. Not a conditional love. Not He loves us because I learn Torah. Not He loves us because I keep Shabbos. Not He loves me because I keep the mitzvahs. Not He loves me because I don't do Averos. Yeah, I have to do all of those things. That's absolutely true. But it's an unconditional love. It's an ava she'ina teluya b'davar. And He loves me when I'm alive, and He loves me when I'm dead, and He loves me before I'm born, and He loves me when I'm here. He just loves me. We sometimes forget, Chevra, that the Ribono Shel Olam just loves us. But then there's an additional piece. Because it doesn't just say that He loves us, but He loves us like the stars. And what does a star do? What does a star do? A star has a mission. And what's the mission of the star? To bring some light into darkness. And says the Sfas Emes, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't love me because of my mission. He loves me unconditionally. But the love is amplified when I fulfill my mission. When I do my part, when I do something to bring a little bit of light to an otherwise dark world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I loved you so much before, and if it's possible, I love you even more right now. Every single Yid, says the Sfas Emes, has a shlichus, has a mission. Just like a name, right? It's interesting that you could have two people with the same name, but yet that name means something different for each individual, right? You could have two people named Avram, but one may be named after Avram Avinu, and one may be named after his grandfather Avram, right? You could, so the same name, but yet means two different things for two different people. Why? Because each and every one of us has our own shlichus. We have our own agency, our own mission, our own purpose. Just like every single star. It's interesting, as the pasuk says, Rashi calls this pasuk, Shemotziam umachnisam b'mispar ubishmosam. When Hashem takes out the stars, every star has its number, and every star has its name. Every star has an identity. Every star has a shlichus. And every Yid has an identity, and every Yid has an agency. Identity and agency. And it says when you put it all together, says the Sfas Emes, the opening pasuk of our national narrative, the opening message of our national narrative is that number one, Hashem loves us. Number two, each of us has a unique identity. And number three, which is really related to number two, we each have our own unique and specific mission. We each have something that we need to accomplish here in this world. Just like the stars. And the Rebbe says, Bigadol in a general sense, on one hand, our mission is the same, because each of us have a mission to bring light. Just the difference is we bring light in different ways. Some of us bring just like a little beam, and others create like a massive floodlight. But we all create light in some way in this world. Hashem loves us. We have a name and we have a mission. We have identity and we have agency. That's our avodah. The first message Hakadosh Baruch Hu gives us as a people. What an overwhelming idea. Chavra, sometimes we go through life and we think that we don't matter. We think that what we do doesn't really make such a big difference. Or if it matters, who does it really matter to? Maybe if I'm married, it matters to my spouse or to my kids. Or I don't know, maybe I work in a company, it matters to my employees or my employer. But we often assume that the scope of our impact is limited. But it's interesting. Sometimes, you look up at the sky, and if you see a clear night and it's a whole host of stars, you may be tempted to say that, what would be the big deal if one of those stars were extinguished, right? And stars do become extinguished. So does it change? There's a little bit less light. And the truth is, Kadosh Baruch Hu knows the names of each of those stars, the numbers of each of those stars, the identity and the agency. We matter. We're loved and we matter. And this is so incredibly important. been thinking a lot about this because we're all following, of course, with bated breath. I'm recording this Devar Torah. It's Thursday morning, Erev Shabbos, and the latest news out of Eretz Yisrael is that the hostage deal is still not finalized, and it's not clear exactly what's going to happen. And there's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate amongst our people. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And it sounds crazy to have it. It's almost surreal that we have to have these kind of debates. But there's legitimacy to both sides of this. On one hand, bringing precious neshamas home. We've been davening for more than a year to please Ribono Shel Olam, be matir asurim, be poda shavuyim, bring them home, not just as a mantra, but as a tefillah. Bring them home. Children, adults, mothers, fathers, daughters, soldiers, civilians, elderly, young. The notion that there are precious Jews being held captive, we can't rest. We can't rest. So if there's an opportunity, if there's a light, if there's a window, of course you have to take it. On the other hand, we understand. What about all of the families who have given their sons and daughters to this war? What about their sacrifice? What about Adani Tzachon? What about until we succeed? What about the fact that we will be releasing prisoners with blood on their hands who are not going to be repatriated and find peaceful lives to themselves, but will almost no doubt go back to their terror-filled, barbaric ways? How do you reconcile all this? Who's right? And of course, certainly from 6,000 miles away, it's not for us to weigh in on who's right. Of course, we all have our own opinions. But I'll tell you the way I approach it. The way I approach it is that I hope that Jews are able to come home. That's what I hope. And I know maybe it's not the right military decision, and maybe it's not the right political decision, but I hope the Jews are going to come home. Because each and every one of our brothers and sisters held captive in Gaza is a star in the beautiful celestial sphere of Klal Yisrael. And we have not been able to partake of their light for over a year now. And because of that, we are diminished. And because of that, we are weakened. And so as a person, as an individual, again, not a political comment. I don't know. I don't know politically or militarily what is the right thing to do. And nor even if the hostage deal goes through, it's not like there's going to be like a wave of celebration, because there's so much loss, there's so much pain, and there are still going to be those left behind. But when I read these words of the Sfas Emes, and I hear this idea of Shemos b'nei Yisrael, that every Yid has a name, and every Yid is like a star, and every Yid has a shlichus, and that for over 450 days, our brothers and sisters have been kept in conditions that who could imagine, without their light shining forth. If there's a possibility for that, so to me, I'm not going to say it gives me joy, because joy is not the right emotion here. But it gives me a tremendous sense of hisorus, a tremendous sense of spiritual awakening, knowing that maybe broken pieces of Klal Yisrael will be put back together. We can never imagine the sacrifices of our holy soldiers and their families. And like I said, I don't know what the right answer is. But I know, based on the words of the Sfas Emes, that each of us has a light, each of us has an identity, and each of us has an agency. And if we can get back some of the beautiful members of Klal Yisrael, how much better and how much more powerful we will be as a nation. And for our own lives, we go through life often kind of just checking boxes, trudging along, without realizing that we each have identity and we each have agency. We are each profoundly loved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, unconditionally. But that love is amplified when I discover my identity and I discover my agency on the most basic level. That agency is to bring light where there is darkness. So if you see darkness around you, do what you can to infuse a little bit of light. Be a star. Be a source of illumination. Do something to actualize your shlichus. Do something to bring your identity to life. Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael is not simply a historical retrospective pasuk, but rather it becomes the mandate for our nation, becomes the mandate for us. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.